Hello, everyone, and welcome to the World Parks Academy webinar series. Today's topic is on the Playground Maintenance Technician Training Program. My name is Hannah Cleveland, and I'm the World Parks Academy Administrator hosting today from the Epley Institute at Indiana University. Our speakers today, we have Bill Hooker. He is based in the U.S. and the state of Illinois and is the Education and Training Supervisor for the Park District Risk Management Agency. He's a certified playground safety inspector and has over 29 years of experience in playground safety that includes audits, inspections, installation, consultation, and accident investigation. Bill was an integral part of the initial design team for the Playground Maintenance Technician Training Program. We have Sarah Murray, who is here with me today at the Epley Institute. She is the program manager for the Playground Maintenance Training Program. She has a background in urban and regional planning, and prior to this, she worked in international development, where she facilitated short-term exchange programs focused on leadership. Now I would like to pass the mic to you guys, and we can start the presentation. Thank you.
Well, very good, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure speaking with you today. We're going to start off in sort of a high level on how we got here. And studies by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission and playground manufacturers really reflect the fact that 40% of public playground injuries result from either a lack of or improper maintenance. The wear, if you look at the picture here on this slide, the wear in this connector, it didn't happen after 1 week or 1 month or probably several months. And this example illustrates a systematic failure in approaching safety in playgrounds. And it really reinforces the fact for playground operators to implement proactive maintenance systems to manage playgrounds. It also shows that being proactive, an individual playground inspector and operator can really make a difference in keeping a child from being injured. So after receiving feedback from industry professionals, it was determined that there are playground safety programs that are out there in the industry, but primarily their focus, it stuck around, it identified that on standards-based training or audits, and really not that of comprehensive addressing playground maintenance needs. So the Park District Risk Management Agency collaborated with industry professionals, with lawyers, with risk management professionals, with academic scholars and playground manufacturers, and we decided that there was a skill gap and really looked at the need to launch and create a formal training program dedicated to playground maintenance. So approximately 10 years ago, the Playground Maintenance Program, a comprehensive program for maintaining safe playgrounds, was created. This was created by the Park District Risk Management Agency in Illinois. A partnership with the Epley Institute in Indiana University was established, and from there on, the program has really grown over the years. This program has been presented to over 2,000 participants, and it's been presented throughout the United States as well as through Malaysia. Upon completion of this program, participants receive a certificate of completion from Indiana University as a playground maintenance technician. So what does this program include? It is a 2-day classroom program with a 250-page manuscript, and the program is clearly the most comprehensive program on the topic of playground maintenance. Now, the information contained in this playground is what we're going to be sharing and highlighting today as part of this short program. And really a key concept that drives all of the information and the learning activities of is the Playground Maintenance Diamond of Care. The Diamond of Care was created as a systematic model that, if followed, can assist any organization. And what it can do for an organization is to assist in expanding the lifespan of a playground, to assist in keeping the aesthetically appealing playground so that children and the public will want to play on it. It can assist in eliminating playground hazards within the playground. And then it can also, and as important, complement the goal of providing child development and promoting the value of play. The first element in the Diamond of Care is that of knowledge. And knowledge is something that a playground operator can gain in both formal and informal settings. This can be done from reading books, manuals, looking at videos, attending formal workshops or conferences. It also can be done by shadowing trained professionals who have applied their skills in the field and networking with one's peers. A playground operator must have knowledge on how to inspect and maintain a playground. Now, a key part of this is seeking out the applicable laws, standards, guidelines within one's jurisdiction. And this doesn't matter if one is within the United States, within Europe, within Africa, within an Asian country, somewhere, somehow, there's a jurisdiction where there are standards, laws, or guidelines that one really wants to be knowledgeable about. And let's talk for an example here within the United States. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a federal law. Therefore, in the United States, it applies to most all playgrounds. However, the Consumer Product Safety Commission guidelines and the ASTM standards may or may not be required within a playground operator's jurisdictions. For example, in some states within the United States, they've adopted them as law. Other states have them more as a guideline or a best practice. Regardless of the country, regardless of the location that one lives within, it's very important that that operator seek out the knowledge on the applicable standards, guidelines, and best practices for which they should be following. Along with that is for an organization and an operator to determine, do they want to follow minimum standards, or do they hopefully want to go beyond minimum standards and look at some of the best practices that have been established within the industry. The next step in the process of the diamond of care is that of the inspection process. This is a systemic approach to inspections that can be created using the playground operator's knowledge that they've gained. It also utilizes their experiences. Now, there are parts of the inspection process that include frequency of inspection. On a high level, this includes an audit. If a playground audit has been conducted by the operator, this is a high-level, comprehensive inspection of the playground in which a trained professional has gone out and looked at every nut and bolt and measured items to the standards within your jurisdiction. For the sake of today, though, what we're going to be looking at is frequency of inspection regarding high frequency and low frequency inspections. Basically, where we're going here is that your inspections have the proper knowledge to the degree of the job task that you're wanting them to provide. For example, a high frequency inspector might be someone who is on a regular basis, whether that be daily, weekly, picking up glass or debris in the playground and looking for obvious hazards. They may have some basic training on playground safety versus a low frequency inspector where he or she were out looking for hazards within the playground that may not be as noticeable. They have higher amount of training, more skills that are provided to them. These individuals might be also using their sight, sound, touch to identify safety concerns and other deficiencies on the playgrounds. Playground inspectors can proactively identify hazards prior to an injury. Let's talk for a moment on some specific items that we have discussed over the years with playground inspectors. First of all, being concrete footers. An often overlooked but critical inspection point is concrete footers. And I think part of this is because playground equipment collapse is definitely a high severity incident, but it's also a low frequency of occurrence. So sometimes playground operators have focused on other areas. Now, it's really important to look at what your manufacturer is recommending as far as playground inspections for footers go, but also best practices might include looking at, as the playground is being installed, making sure that someone within your organization is looking at the footing, looking at the pour to make sure that what your specifications are being covered, to make sure that there are no cracks or problems initially before they're being covered up with either loose fill or with either unitary coverings for surfacing. Something to consider, again, looking at your playground manufacturers as your first direction, is to systematically look at inspection points as you move along. For example, if you have loose fill, a playground operator may come in a year or two later and look at a key footer, dig down to the bottom of the loose fill and look for cracks, look to make sure that there's been no heaving. And periodically from there on, if things are fine, cover them back up and look at a different footing periodically throughout the year. If things are fine, maybe every 5 years you go around and systematically approach the playground footings, looking at some on the north end of the playground, some at the south, maybe starting first for some of those areas that are load-bearing or moving. If there are problems, maybe one makes note of the problems, and if they need to follow up and look the next year or following years. If there are no problems, move on to the next one. The bottom line is, how often are you inspecting your playground footers? This is something that we don't want to do because it can be time consuming and shut our playground down for a little while. Now, the more difficult part of inspecting footings is that in unitary surfacing, where we have poured in place surfacing or where we have rubber tiles. We don't necessarily want to tear them up to look at them. So we want to make sure that during our inspections that we are shaking, that we're listening for noise, we're moving things around, checking the integrity of it. And especially if we have subsurface draining problems that exist, it's something that during a remodel or revamping of the playground, we might want to check them out before we put down a new surfacing. Otherwise, we move along and we inspect periodically the playground. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the other things. Corrective action being the next step in the diamond of care. Basically what this is the routine and preventive repairs on the playground. And depending on the need of repair, it may also include isolating the playground from the public, replacing or unfortunately removal of a specific piece of the playground or the playground in its entirety. Now, there are also many factors that should be considered prior to addressing corrective action. And what we've done is to try to combine them into one graphic to assist playground operators. This is a simplistic process that one might want to consider when taking corrective action or equipment repair. Some of these steps in this process include contacting the manufacturer, trying to get their input, especially if it's a repair or a corrective action that you've never taken before. Stepping back and trying to decide, am I going to repair this equipment or is this something that I'm going to replace? Factors that go into that include funding. How much funding do I have to address this? What is the complexity of the repair? Is it something I've done before? Is it going to involve staff capabilities that we don't have, or time to complete the repair in which I'm not going to get many other maintenance activities done throughout my organization? What protective options might I need to protect the public from the playground as I'm doing these repairs or corrective action? How might I inform the public that a repair is being conducted? Maybe I can steer them towards another playground within the area so that they're not the potential for them to enter the playground while it's under repair, and it provides them a play opportunity in another area. Some do this through newsletters or via a web page on your website. And then finally, reviewing all of my actions to make sure what worked, what didn't work, and what system I might want to put in place for the next time I have to make a repair. Now, one key concept when making playground repairs is that of creating no greater harm. Sometimes with the best intentions, a playground operator may make a corrective action to eliminate one hazard and perhaps create a new one. The goal being to eliminate the hazard and keep the playground in service. However, without proper knowledge, an operator may create that additional hazard on the playground. For example, if we look at the slide, let's say that there was a bubble panel on the right picture, And unfortunately, through maintenance needs or through a vandal that broke this piece of equipment, we needed to take some corrective action. The operator wanted to prevent a falling hazard from a child falling out of that open bubble panel to the ground. Best intentions. But as you see on the left slide with the picture, what the operator's done by making this homemade repair is they've created, again, to create no greater hazard, a potential impalement or entanglement hazard. Again, the operator wasn't trying to do that, but it's really knowing the standards, knowing the best practices so that we've got that knowledge base to move forward with our corrective action. Let's talk a little bit about corrective action and what an operator might need to do to isolate the playground or a segment of it from users. For example, a photo on the right shows an operator using caution tape to tape off a missing protective panel. Or in this case, it's actually a clatter bridge that was broken and they needed to take some corrective action. The operator put some caution tape in. But my question for you is this caution tape a long-term solution? Is it really preventing a child from falling to the ground? Instead, is there perhaps a short-term temporary barrier we might put in? Or to the left in the picture that's illustrated, the long-term practice of closing off the entire playground or a section of it so that we can get this repaired on and keep the public safe. Another area that often needs corrective action is that of the surfacing within our playground. For example, in Illinois, playground operators find mold growing in the loose fill materials. And some common questions and great questions that we get are, is this dangerous? Why do we have it? How do I get rid of it? And those are really important questions for a lot of playground corrective action. And those are some things that in the PMT class we like to discuss. For example, is it dangerous? Well, mold in the playground surfacing can be dangerous to individuals that may have elevated medical conditions, such as asthma. Why do I have it? Well, most likely from high moisture content within the soil or the surfacing within Illinois and a lack of sunlight. And that combination, unfortunately, brings us mold. How do I get rid of it? Well, this is the part of the program that's really enjoyable in brainstorming with playground operators in networking with our peers. Physically removing this mold, typically with a shovel, and then applying a mixture of HG laundry detergent with water at a 1:3 ratio. Several applications may be needed. But the example I bring up sometimes is a playground operator without that knowledge. They may go out and find bleach or some other chemical that might pose a greater hazard in the playground environment and probably should not be used. Let's talk about another component on our playgrounds that's very prevalent in the playground industry, being that of plastic parts. Plastic, like any material, can wear and eventually fail. But the question is, how do we prolong the life of our plastics? How do we get that longer lifespan? Well, some operators will periodically spray wash select plastic components. Doing so, what are they trying to do? They're trying to remove the dirt, the mold, the bird droppings, and other debris that may break down the chemicals in the plastic. Doing so expands your lifespan of the playground. Now, another key factor that can increase the lifespan of plastics is that of minimizing the exposure to the sun. How might one do that? Formal play structures that can be purchased and installed, or trees. Now, these practices require the operator to look at their return on the investment and to conduct the maintenance versus the lifespan and aesthetics overall review of your playground. So let's take a moment now and talk about documentation. This is another key step and the final step in the playground maintenance process. Basically what we're talking about here, documentation extremely important to confirm that actions were taken by your playground operator. They also can be the basis for identifying trends within your playground, identifying that certain types of equipment might be failing more often than others, that certain maintenance practices work better than others. Really something proactive to assist you in the process. They can also serve as a tool in some settings as a legal defense, or in the school of public opinion, what they are is showing the public that your proactive efforts are making a difference and that you're trying to do the best for the public. Now, regardless of your organization and whether they use paper forms to document playground corrective action and inspections, or if they use an electronic system with a tablet and perhaps an electronic work order system, it's really vital, regardless of how you do it, that formal documentation and a system has been set up and developed so that you have a formal documentation process. So what we would like to do now is to provide you with some practical application of how the diamond of care flows together. And what we put together is a really short demonstration video from an activity that we conduct in the PMT virtual playground as part of the class. After this, we'll open it up to questions to the group.
Can you all see this screen?
We see your slide scale, but we're not seeing the video yet.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Is it there?
There you go.
Okay.
Updates to the virtual playground allow participants to implement the diamond of care in a playground environment. By using a controller, inspectors can identify playground hazards, push buttons to make decisions, and apply their skills with their classmates, thus bringing the playground into the classroom and applying skills in real-life situations. Let's take a look at the virtual playground. Now that we've completed the formal class, what we want to do is apply the skills in the virtual playground. So what we have is John has volunteered to be our first inspector. Thanks, John, for coming up and inspecting the virtual playground for us. What we've decided as a class is we are going to inspect, first of all, the virtual swings. So as John is moving in closer to the virtual swings, John, as you go out and you inspect the swings during your regular duties, what is one key inspection area that you always focus on with the virtual swings?
Well, I know the seat is an area that's of importance to focus on, so I usually start there.
Okay, and when you're focusing on the swings, how do you inspect the swings? What do you do?
Well, like to grab and twist the parts, so twisting the seat is what I typically do.
Very good. And what are some of the things you look for or try to observe for when you're out looking at the swings then?
I look for any signs of damage, rust, or parts that are loose or protruding.
Okay, very good. Well, John, let's go ahead and if you could click the button there with the crosshair, we're going to inspect the seat. So, John, based on the picture that you see under inspect, describe for me what you're seeing now.
Yeah, well, on this, I definitely see that there's exposed metal there and some deterioration.
Very good. And a little cracking maybe down below?
Yeah, looks like that as well, yeah. Some cracked rubber.
Excellent. So now that you've observed that, what we've got to do is we've got to go to our hazard priority rating. So how would you prioritize this hazard based on some of your experience?
Well, I know it's not a 5. It's, probably more likely for a 3, I'd say 3.
Very good. I'd go with that. So likely to cause non-disabling injury. So if you can go ahead and click the A there. Very good. So based on the fact that 3 was your hazard priority, we've got to do some corrective action. Can we just leave that alone forever?
No.
No, okay. So what would you say we need to do for corrective action?
Yeah, so with this, we definitely have to replace the item. So I'll select that.
Okay, so if you could go ahead and push next then. Very good. So now on your inspection forms, everybody has in front of them out in the group, we need to document this. So think about your forms that you have back at your agency. Now, is this okay? Does it need maintenance, or are you going to formally request for a repair? John, at your agency, what would you do?
Yeah, I think we'd put in a work order for request for repair, so I'm going to select that.
All right, go ahead and push next then. Very good. So now what we've got the swing seat summary here. And as we go through the summary, let's talk about your knowledge, John. Summarize for me what you saw and what you'd put on your inspection form.
Yeah, well, the seat was definitely starting to fall apart. It had deterioration and some exposed metal there.
Okay, which seat was it?
The swing seat, yeah.
Yeah, and what we want to do is make sure we're very specific. So the north swing seat or under the red swing. So very good. Now, hazard priority, you were a...
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a 3.
Okay, John gave it a 3. Your corrective action again was going to be?
Yeah, replace the item.
And then as far as documentation goes, John wasn't going to do it right now. You were going to?
Yeah, I was going to put in a work order for request for repair, so.
So that's basically what John and his agency would be doing. What I'd like to do is throw it out to the group as a whole. Anybody doing anything different? Okay, Greg? Greg stated that he would keep the hazard priority of a 3. He was good with that. But at their agency, corrective action and the documentation will be a little bit different. What was it, Greg? So Greg's stating that they would actually go ahead and replace, but they keep swing seats on their trucks. So he would go ahead and replace it himself, whereas at John's agency, they do a little bit different system, different process. There's no right, there's no wrong. They're jumping on it right away. So he would repair it, replace it right away, and then your documentation would be very good. So his documentation would be, I actually replaced it, he would initial it, go ahead and date it, that he closed the loop through the diamond of care, and he's completed that process. Excellent. Anyone else do it any different? Nothing there. So what we're going to do now is we are going to move along to John. Can you, you're a volunteer, and can you do one more amenity for me here on the swings? What's another key inspection point that you might do on the swings? We looked at the seat.
Yeah, well, either the chain or the connectors here.
Okay, go ahead with whatever you think's right.
Probably the chain.
All right, let's go with the chain.
Okay, as you could see there by that quick demonstration, it's really important that the frontline playground inspector, the individual doing maintenance, understands the playground diamond of care. When doing so, it really puts together that puzzle where they're able to apply their knowledge, put that to where their inspections have a meaning, that they are working within their system for the corrective action that works best within their system for that type of repair based on the wheel that we showed with the manufacturer's input, the funding, all those things that we discussed there. And then finally, regardless of whether there is an electronic or paper system, that they are documenting both their observation and the inspection, and that the corrective action taken is all put together. So that really brings the process as a whole together in the diamond of care. So with that was really the formal element that we had here for the program. We would open that up to any specific questions that might be out there. And as you could see, from plastics to metals to all those amenities on the playgrounds, we could apply the diamond of care to any of those processes and types of equipment.
Great, thank you, Bill and Sarah. Before learning about this, playground maintenance is not something that I ever really thought about, and it's nice to see that someone's working on it and see how important it is. So a couple things that I've gathered from the presentation is it's important for safety for children and also for longevity as far as the resources and materials used. And I'm sure that impacts funding. So I'm wondering if you could talk about any other reasons why playground maintenance is important.
You know, the key element of any playground is playgrounds are installed to allow children to learn. Play is how children learn. So a really key element is when for some reason your organization installed this playground into this setting, whether it be a park setting or a school setting, and you had some goals for that. And by establishing a formal playground maintenance process, the safety, the value of play, and allowing children to learn is really the goal entirely for this type of process.
Thank you. Are your maintenance notes that are taken, are they recorded in a software system, or is this something that can be recorded in a basic Excel spreadsheet or other way of tracking it?
That's an excellent question that is often something that playground operators right now are looking at. Is the process, the key is having a process, and such a process can be established through the formal paper and pencil type process, or it can be something that an operator uses an electronic type program. And there are a number of electronic systems that are out on the marketplaces. You know, there's advantages and disadvantages of everything. I think a key element is that playground operators network to talk about what systems work for them. What are a lot of formal electronic systems can do many things. Some can be a work order system for your entire organization. Others are more basic and more towards a playground proper. I've seen others that, as you highlighted, Hannah, that I do a paper type inspection correction system that maybe I'm formalizing it and documenting in an Excel spreadsheet to where I can do some trending also. So there's multiple ways to do it. There's really no right or wrong. It's what works for your organization as far as a system, and what funding mechanisms do you have to help support that.
Great, thank you. Bishop, if you are still on the line, I'd be curious to hear what, if anything, you do for playground maintenance in South Africa that you know of. Might be up in the air. Bill, if you know of anything that's going on in other countries as far as how that might be different or similar, that might be interesting to talk about.
Well, I think the key is that regardless of our venue, whether we're in Canada, Europe, Africa, the United States, is that most have come up with some standards, some guidelines. Most also have manufacturers' representatives that they can use as an opportunity for additional resources. And it really, regardless of the standards and guidelines, all of us have the common goal of keeping the aesthetically safe playground and the learning opportunities for the children. And I think that events such as this, where we can share some of those best practices that often apply regardless of our location, our cultures, they may be slightly different, but we all have the same ultimate goal.
It's true. How common are playground-related injuries?
Unfortunately, they happen. My organization has approximately 160 different entities with thousands of playgrounds. And fortunately, over the years, they have put together these systems to where the severity issues have been minimized. Now, unfortunately, part of children playing is that of at times failing. I reach for the next rung in the overhead ladder, or I'm doing activities. Children learn by failing. We do that as adults. Really, our goal, though, is making sure that that's not because of improper maintenance or hazards on the playground. I think something very important is that playground operators, as individuals that oversee playground programs, we don't want to eliminate the risk associated with playgrounds. If we take the risk off, children will not want to play on the playground. It'll be the one piece of playground equipment that none of the children go to. But really our primary goal is to determine what is our risk tolerance, how comfortable we are, and then at that point to eliminate the hazards, the bad things associated with the playground. That's really what's important.
Thank you. I have another question.
Sure.
I'm thinking about splash pads. Is that something that you manage too, or is that more aquatics?
We do manage splash pads, and there are very similar practices. I think the unique thing, Hannah, is that the diamond of care is really universal to anything. It could be on your baseball, softball field, your football field, your playground. So the process, as far as having knowledge, as far as inspecting, as far as correcting, as far as documentation, that's all applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the surfacing needs are made by the same manufacturer, so sometimes very similar. At least in the United States, there's some different practices, standards that are associated with that. So a lot of the concepts are very similar, though.
Okay. And for someone who's in another country, if they wanted to get more training on this, how would they do that?
Sarah, you want to jump in on that, please?
We are in the process of exploring opportunities to bring the PMT program to different countries. So first and foremost, I would say stay tuned. We do have select PMT trainings in Singapore and Malaysia at this point in time, but we are looking at expanding it to more countries. The challenge, of course, has to do with language and making sure that the presentation and instruction is an accessible format to everyone, as well as understanding the differences in regulation and liability between different countries. But it is something that we're exploring and hope to be able to expand in the future.
That's great news. Thank you. So PMT does have a website. Is it?
It's playgroundmaintenance.org.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions that I have. Bishop, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat box or email us later on if anything comes up. Otherwise, this webinar is recorded and will be available on provalenceLearning.com. Looks like we have, oh, he'll email us. Connection's probably not that great on the plane. So this webinar is available on provalenceLearning.com, and CEUs, continuing education units, are also available with a short assessment and a $15 fee. And look out for more World Practice Academy webinars. We are offering them every month. So thank you. Thank you, Bill and Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.